This conference will now be recorded.
All right, well, we will call to order the Monterey Select Board at 6:02 PM on January 28th. Susan and myself are present here in Town Hall. And Frank, it looks like you're online.
Yes, I am. Can you see me? I can hear everything. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
can
can.
and see you too,
Yeah.
whether you like it or not.
I can change that. Just slide this button.
All right, so the first order of business is the fire department staffing.
So, what is give me your question. All right, basically, we're continuing to work on this. Roger and I met with the fire department yesterday. Among the things that came out of that meeting that I know we have to run by you guys is, so they looked into the firefighter app. I think we had mentioned that at the last meeting, and actually managed to have the meeting with them. And basically, the guy who runs it offered them a plan for a year at $2,800 that would include putting up a social media platform, maintaining it, sending out, basically putting a media presence out there, putting up the application, and it would include all the application fees. So instead of having people paying fees for each application, that would cover all of that. I think that's what the 2,800 covers. They do offer background check services for an additional fee, although it sounds like their background check isn't as comprehensive as what we might get from our own fire department. They hadn't managed to meet directly with Brian yet. The company also can do the physical fitness portion. That's not a medical exam, but it's a, like, can you lift the hose kind of thing. Uh-oh. I can't answer you right now, dude. Why would you do that? You know I'm in a meeting. But they probably wouldn't use it because it's all the way down in Connecticut, and what was it, Wallingford?
Yeah,
I think
so,
Wallingford.
yeah.
However, the guy did say that they were welcome to come down there to get ideas for how they would run that part, which I thought was useful. I think it's worth that outlay. Apparently Dalton used them in their last round of hiring. Dalton was concerned they wouldn't really get many applicants at all, and they got 15 in the first week.
Do you know how many fire departments are subscribed to their service?
That is a good question. It's not just fire departments either. That's a good question, but we should have them ask
Individuals.
that. It's individuals too. So individual firefighters can subscribe so that they can see all of the postings. They can choose postings from particular states. Like somebody who lived in Mass could, for example, choose to look at postings in New York, Vermont, Connecticut, New Hampshire, whatever, and see all the postings for all those states. And I think it's not just the departments we'd be interested in knowing about, but we did suggest to the guys that they look and see what departments were using it and maybe call some people at those departments to see how it worked for them. If it's been successful for other departments, I'm inclined to say it's a good expenditure of money, given what we've gone through to try to.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it. I think we need to get some references, understand how many companies are doing it. How long has it been out?
Oh, a few years. I think it's been out for a while.
I don't know. They said it in out a while, but they didn't give a number of years.
Yeah, it's really just a place where we would post a job and people,
Right.
Other firefighters will see that job. It's kind of like a Indeed for firefighters.
Right.
Hang on, I'm thinking of some questions we gotta ask. how many
Yeah.
fire departments use it, how many subscribers they have, because that would
Right.
be a total of departments and individuals.
Right. You know, if
Um,
they have individual subscribers and they're charging for it, you know, for an individual, so I can understand charging like us for it because there's service they offer. But I think you'd be discouraging members from checking it out because everything's, you know, Indeed's free, you know.
um, Indeed is free, but the firefighters don't use it.
Uh, right.
The advantage, I think the advantage here is that it's a very targeted audience. It's only
Oh, really?
firefighters that are using it. And the social media part of it is a non-trivial part.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you a more of a presence out there, and that's what people under 30 are doing,
Right.
right?
Well,
So far, I have not been impressed with Indeed when it comes to hiring for town, but I mean, I guess
I,
we've managed to find people.
I, I don't have a problem going, you know, because the skill set is a specialty and it's
Mhm,
not general. I just think we need to do our due diligence and talk
mhm.
to other fire departments that have used it and make sure that they're, you know, how do you make sure that they're financial, you know, but you said it was a couple of years old, so maybe they're financially stable. Um, you know, I would do
Your
some
question
more
is,
due diligence on it before we proceed with investing in it.
to use. So I hadn't thought of the question of does it cost a firefighter to use the app
Right,
or not? Because
right.
it may be free to the firefighters, and the 2,800 also covers the social media presence, because it's a different amount if we just want to use it to put up the applications.
Hmm.
So the questions I have are, how many fire departments use it? How many subscribers do they have? Reach out to their references or to other departments that use it and see how successful it's been for them. And does it cost a firefighter, like an individual that belongs, does it
Right,
cost them to
right,
use the app? Is
right.
that the whole list of questions?
Yeah, that's a list of questions, and I think references would be the best.
Yeah, I do too. They're planning to at least call the Dalton department, but I
Right,
suggested they try a couple of others as well.
They
right.
have, they have 4 municipalities in Massachusetts. They're working with over 20 different departments, probably close to 30 in Connecticut and in Rhode Island.
Mhm.
And, you know, their website has a lot of different things.
Can you repeat those numbers quickly?
Oh yeah, so there's about 30 departments in both Connecticut and Rhode Island, 4 in Massachusetts.
Okay,
Interesting that it's not
okay.
a common.
And again, a handful in Vermont and New Hampshire, Maine, just a
Mhm.
handful. But they're all over the country. Yeah.
No, that sounds like a good option. Let's do a little more research before we make an investment.
Yep. I mean, and you're right, Indeed is free. We could slap the ad up there
Well, I
and
mean, I
see
would
what
put it up there
jobs we
anyway
have. We
because
could
it
have
doesn't
a way
cost
of
you.
handling it.
But I would, you know, it's, you know, their specialty, you know,
Yeah, and there's no
word of
exclusivity.
mouth.
There's no reason we can't post in both. The advantage is that it also funnels all the applications, and as they fill out the application, it sounds like it's very structured. They have to actually provide on that platform all of the requirements for the job description. So
Mhm.
one advantage is it discourages people who aren't actually qualified for the job, like if you don't have your firefighter 1 or 2, if you don't have whatever the job is, or the certifications that are required, and you can't load those, then you can't apply for the job. It won't let you
Right.
finish that application, which kind of seems appropriate. Whereas I suspect on Indeed we'll be flooded by a lot of trying to follow up with people to get them to send in what they want. But you're right, it may go out to different people. I'm encouraged by the fact that Dalton got 15 apps in a week,
Mhm.
but I don't know. Anyway, so that was number 1. Number 2, we had a long conversation about we did do a lot of talking about the specifics of the hiring process, cause it's not something they've had to do before. But we also are working on all of the specifics of like vacation time and Kelly hours and sick hours and trying to, it doesn't work to just pull exactly what we have in the employee manual when you're dealing with 48-hour shifts.
Right.
So trying to come up with reasonable numbers that make sense. Ultimately, we're definitely gonna have to bring it to you and this body, but we're trying to come up with hours that make sense and a plan that makes sense, and we're experimenting with different possibilities. Everything has pros and cons, obviously. What did I leave out? Roger, what did I leave out? Anything? I will send you the updated Excel worksheet,
Mhm.
our, latest version this afternoon. And you can, you're a good test subject, because if you can't follow what my annotations and what everything on there means, then I gotta add some stuff to it.
Susan, is that numbers or that bullet points explaining reasons and
It's,
process?
this is numbers, but there's annotations and why what those numbers represent. Because
Okay.
it's not always obvious, like, it's not just this many hours at this rate, it's like, yes, it's this many hours because you're only allowed to work that many hours because of this and this and this, and
Mhm.
that's why we have this other thing, which is the additional hours that have to be made up. I mean, God, it would be so much easier to just hire people on salary. That is really the only thing I can say at this point.
That ain't gonna happen.
I know. There's not, we keep trying to find things that we could cut to bring the price down.
Right.
And at the end of the day, there's not a lot. Roger and I had come up with, what if we delayed the EMT hires to 6 months? But they pointed out that then they'd be taking on new people and trying to train in January, which is not the best time to be trying to do
Because of weather.
outdoor training, right? Like, that's a real thing. It's not just a made thing, given the weather we've had recently. There's not a lot of sluff. There's just not. I don't know what else. Oh, the other thing is we're talking to them about, the shift program would be another thing. How many people are on the shift program at night?
Right.
Another positive thing and interesting thing that happened is that Eileen had a conversation with Beth Regal-Buto, who's the superintendent of Southern Berkshire Regional School District, about this whole situation of the lack of firefighters and EMTs in not just the county, but the state, given there's only 11 people signed up to train at the firefighter academy for the state of Massachusetts. And floated the idea of some type of program to get maybe seniors involved in trainings. It's a little unclear whether it would be EMT training or firefighter EMT training or what, but a program to try to raise interest in it. And Beth floated that she thought it would be good to have parents able to attend it, and I'd even put in members of the community. If we're running a class, let's run it for anybody who's age eligible and interested.
Right.
But the point is, apparently there's a lot of interest. She was, according to Eileen, extremely enthusiastic, far more enthusiastic than Eileen. Eileen thought she liked the idea, but she was even more enthusiastic about it than Eileen thought she would be. So that's not gonna help us tomorrow, but we have to face the idea that the pipeline about this is a real issue. And I'm gonna raise it at the EMS meeting that's finally got scheduled for February 12th. I think it's the 12th. I'm gonna raise that and suggest to towns that they start thinking about whether their school systems would be willing to do that program, or they'd be willing to send students to a program run by Southern Berkshire, or just the more towns that invest in this, the more people we may get in the pipeline for the future, because we're going to need them.
Right, yeah.
You know, I'd rather have people doing that than hairdressing. Sorry, I always
I'm
go
not
back to
gonna
that one with
comment on that.
Thanksgiving, so I was so mad.
Are you insinuating something about my hair?
No, that was one of the tracks that they were talking about for the combined regional school system track. Yeah. Because they asked the girls what they wanted to do, and you ask a bunch of 9th and 10th graders what they want to do for a career, the girls all say, I want to do hair and makeup.
Yeah,
I shouldn't say it like that, but, you know,
I know.
it's a
Susan,
certain
I
level of.
have a couple things I want to bring up. One is what if we would have a joint select board finance committee meeting with Sean and Chris there to talk about what's going on. So we all are in the same room at the same time. Two is some of the things that are stated to me is, well, what about regionalization? Because proportionally, when you have these three different management teams running everything, are we going to go towards more regionalization with the management because of the potential savings for pay? I
So,
don't.
good question. Like, I don't have the final answers to this. It's a question that everybody keeps asking. I can only give you my personal impressions from the discussions I've had about the topic, which is that in sparsely populated, widespread regions,
Mm-hmm.
problem you run into with attempting regionalization is the cost savings aren't what you expect. Because at the end of the day, unlike a regionalized school where you can say, we might not like it, but we can put our school kids on the bus for an hour each way. A fire department that arrives an hour later, you might as well not bother. The building has burned to the ground, right?
Yeah,
So emergency services, let me finish. Emergency services that arrive too late. So the logistics end up, and you know, I was talking to somebody about this with like Lennox and Lee are both building enormous complexes at
that's right.
huge costs, right? But if you stop and think about delivery of services in a timely fashion, at the end of the day, you're going to need to house crews and trucks at different places if you want response time to be low enough to be of service. And once you start doing that, you might save at the management level, but you're going to need actually more trucks and more staff, and maybe some of the buildings would be smaller, but there's only such a small building you could build to house 2 trucks.
Mhm.
And sleeping quarters if you're
Right.
staffing it 24/7, right? And so I don't know, but my gut tells me at the end of the day, the logistics of this situation prevent you from having the kind of cost savings people imagine. And
But,
maybe I'm wrong, but
but when we talked last week or the week before, Chris had said that New Marlboro and Otis were working on their manning, like Chris and Sean are working on the manning for Monterey. Is that correct?
staffing, but yes,
And that's seems to be more concentrated on ambulance
right now.
than not, instead of fire.
It is.
Although I think Chuck is talking to him about fire as well, because they had that situation already this year where it's gonna end up being fire too. Right now, they're talking about the ambulance thing.
Mhm.
And we're trying to figure out how we can cover, and if we can cover the 3 towns
Mhm.
effectively. But right now, we're waiting for ambulance services to come from Barrington.
Well, I realize that from Southern Berkshire. Um, but you know, the question is, another question that has come up to me, are these other towns that we're talking about ambulance service with, are they going to take the same kind of budget increase that we're going to take?
Have no idea. And right now, I feel like it's, if you build it, they will come. This is the first time, the last 6 months are the first time we've really seen the other towns taking these cooperative arrangements serious, like
Mhm.
wanting them, seeking them out.
Mhm.
If it works for EMS to some degree, I'm hopeful that we might be able to work something out with fire. What that's gonna be, I'm not even willing to gamble on. And maybe ultimately it'll end up being a fire district. The upside of that is fire district. The downside of it is fire district. We basically stop, once it becomes a fire district, we lose, and the town loses any control of it.
Right, I
It
understand
becomes
that.
its own entity.
But an observation is we know what we know right now, but we don't know what we don't know.
And some of those things are not knowable,
Well,
right?
I'm
We
not saying,
predict what New Marlboro voters are gonna do about a combined department 2 years down the road. I can't even predict what my voters are gonna do 6 months from now.
I know, but I think the thing about it is it's all about the transparency. It's okay, in my opinion, it's okay to say we don't know right now. The problem is that what problem are we trying to solve? The problem is solved, we don't have enough firefighters to respond for a real emergency. We're headed that it's like we're driving down the road into the tunnel and this is what we're going to hit. So we have to solve that problem. You know, if there's an opportunity to consolidate services and save money, we will talk about that. But I think that my concern is being able to show the transparency, let people ask the questions and say, we don't know what it looks like right now. But if we don't talk about it out loud now, it'll be like, well, proportionally, this is getting way out of, you know, are we just becoming the fire service for these other townships? We're investing, we're seeing X amount of dollar increases on our taxes. What goes? You
And
know,
I think your point is well taken. At the end of the day, I think, we reached a moment where we saw that we were gonna have a failure in service and we had a choice to make. I think the other towns are approaching that point, but, I mean, actually, Roger said to me either today or the other day, he wishes we had started on this process 2 years ago or a year ago.
well, yeah.
Longer ago, because it turns out to be really complicated to do. So
Well,
I agree with you. The bottom line is Chuck was talking to them, arrived and was talking to them as I was walking out. He said, from
but
tomorrow.
I think,
So,
it goes back to originally said, I would like to see us hold a finance select board meeting combined to talk about it because I want everybody to voice their opinions, their thoughts, what they're hearing, what they're thinking, and understanding the complexity of it is crucial. And there's really seven of us, three select board members, Rogers, and three finance. We're going to have to explain it here in 6 or 8 weeks, but we need to, I would like to do it next week, is to have this open meeting and just talk about it with them there. It's a brainstorming, it's an understanding session. It's not there to make this oh my god decision, but we get everybody on the same page because I want the transparency there.
I think so.
yeah, I mean, I feel like, we feel like we probably are close enough with the numbers and the concept that we can definitely have that meeting and, I'm not
I'm
sure
not even
that,
100%. If we said these are the ballpark numbers, I don't have a problem doing that because you'll be fine tuning that up to the day of the budget closes. But, but we need to talk about this is where we are now. This is how we got here. This is what we're thinking, you know, and the question I got, well, what are the other jurisdictions doing? And we can't answer for them. We can only say what we know, but we can't. Their voters could decide on stuff, and I just this is the direction we're leaning. So, okay, I've said my piece.
I agree with everything you said, and the other thing I've been thinking about is, it's a good start, and it will definitely help us to find any holes in the plan, or problems in the plan, or things we could change, as well as if I can't explain it adequately to, or Chris or Sean can't explain it adequately to the other members of the finance committee, how am I gonna do it to anybody else? So
Well,
it's a good opportunity to make the plan as clear as possible. And because my plan is to write the second part of the second article for the news,
mhm.
talking about what that plan's gonna be. I'd like it to be in the March issue. And I think it's really important that we maybe hold a couple of meetings, public meetings for people to come and talk about the plan that follow the issuance of that up. Because people are gonna have a lot of questions, and I think it's
I-
better to start getting people talking about it and talking through it and asking the questions
mhm.
before, so we're not at town meeting for 8 hours talking about it.
Well, it's not, I think that we need to talk about it now because,
Yeah.
you know, your probability, if you're talking about it in detail at the town meeting, the probability of it, because the numbers are so big, it could get rejected. You know,
Moreover, I think it's a lot of complicated, the basic idea is simple, we need a full-time fire department. But the why isn't simple, and the how isn't simple, and people need to really have a clear picture of those things, and not think it's okay for one person to be giving up basically, 7 weeks of work time essentially to be a
well,
volunteer.
I agree with everything you're saying.
I
You know,
know, I
that,
know.
I think when people hear the facts, I think they're going to shift their thoughts to, okay, how do we regionalize this to save money? And are we the only ones coming up to the table spending X amount of hundreds of $1,000s more to do this?
I
So,
think this year we probably are, if you're talking about the 3 adjacent towns. I suspect Otis will be spending more than they have in the past, but it'll be more ambulance related. I have no idea what's going on in New Marlboro. We may know more within a week if we know something about that conversation, but I think it's
huh,
early days. I have the
okay.
sense that New Marlboro is aware of the severity of their problem, but I don't have any idea what they think they want to do about
Okay. All right. Okay. So, um, uh, you know, good.
Excuse me.
it. I think it's a stay tuned event.
Yeah. Well, we got to keep working it. And I think we need to
Yeah,
bring more people into it so we, use them
I
as a
think we,
sounding board and whatever.
Yeah, I can make
Okay.
that happen.
I'm done, Justin.
Okay, so I will, reach out for a joint meeting next week.
Yeah. The finance committee's meeting tomorrow.
Mhm.
so they can just decide to set another meeting next week.
Yeah.
Um, moving on, we have the town clerk job posting, so we're gonna go ahead and post the job. There are a couple of questions about how we want to do that. So we had 2 years ago when we hired for this position, we advertised it as up to 10 hours per week. And as of this year, we were budgeted for 15 hours per week plus an extra 100 hours per year for elections and other busy times, or for special projects such as tackling, organization, more than just the day-to-day. We also had previously advertised the position for up to 35, depending on experience and certification, and what we have budgeted for this year is 26 per hour. And last but not least, the job description says that there are no benefits, but I believe at this point, the job description was last updated a little less than 2 years ago. I think at this point, there is holiday pay and sick pay available to the position. to the degree that they're regularly scheduled
Scheduled hours.
hours
The sick pay would exist either
and holiday and sick in any
Okay.
case. And I assume
way. Although I think we
we'll have
call it,
regularly scheduled hours.
what is it, paid time off. We call it paid
Okay, so it's holiday,
and paid time off.
paid time off. So do we want to advertise it simply at 26 per hour or up to 26, or do we wanna? How do people feel about advertising this position, you know, how it was a couple of years ago, and then how we have it set up now versus what options? You know, we have some flexibility if we have a certified, you know, and I think part of this is that we learned from our last hiring 2 years ago, this isn't really an option. But if someone who was certified and knew everything like the back of their hand came in, they could do it in fewer hours. What we're more likely to hire is someone who has little to no experience as a town clerk, hopefully some municipal experience, and they're gonna be learning things on the job, so it's more hours at a lower rate.
Right.
Do we wanna just assume that and say this is a 15-hour per week position with some additional hours for elections, and it's a $26 per hour position, and just keep it simple?
Well, I would say, I don't know, my feeling is I'd put the hours in there and it could be I'd put in there up to $26 an hour.
Mhm.
That's my feeling too, is that you have that budgeted, if they, show the skill set quickly on, that we can take them to $26 an hour. I don't,
I mean, honestly, I don't think you're gonna get anybody that's gonna stay and be of quality for under 20. I don't know I don't know about that 20 part, but the other
I'd say
question, yeah.
go on, I interrupted, excuse me.
I was gonna say the other thing, we paid for Chris to get training, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do we wanna say that we're willing to pay for their training?
Yeah, I
And
think we, mhm.
And if we say that, we don't have to say this in the ad, but do we wanna require that they work for us for a certain period of time after the training? I mean, because we really need them to get the training to be able to do the job, so maybe not, right?
Well, I think you're between a rock and a hard place, because isn't most of the trainings done during the summer, isn't it, when Chris got trained?
Ooh,
I think they run it more than one time a year.
Yeah,
Who's going to two different kinds?
You went to two different trainings,
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I think, long story short, if we can find someone who's willing to go to the trainings, that's a good thing.
Mhm.
And it's not the kind of industry like a CDL that's highly transferable. So
Right.
if we pay someone to get their CDL, they can then leave and
Yeah.
drive for any of a million trucking companies. I think
Right.
if for some reason it doesn't work out, they probably didn't take this job to go become a town clerk in a larger town.
Yeah, okay, very good point.
So I think we should say that we're gonna pay for training.
mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I
It's not a
agree.
huge expense.
No, it's not a huge expense. I mean, there's housing there or whatever, but still, it's not a huge expense. Where's the- Oh. Are we done with the ad before I?
Not necessarily,
Okay.
so just to clarify, I was gonna say, the current posting, or the last posting said previous experience as a town clerk preferred. I think would like to change to previous municipal experience preferred.
Okay.
I mean, I just don't even think, in our last round, we didn't have any town clerks apply.
Yeah, I think that's good. I agree with your wording.
And then,
Do we wanna, what about the sentence before that? Cause it's, must possess advanced knowledge, skills, progressive experience necessary to serve as a town clerk, so I guess.
I think what that gets at is do you have the organizational skills?
Okay.
Can you handle the computer?
Yep.
Are you computer literate? Do you know all the apps that you'd be likely to be using in that office?
Okay, yeah.
That's what I would read it as.
sorry, I'm taking notes and running a meeting.
That's
It's
fine.
not always pretty. 10 hours per week, so we're gonna say the position requires up to 15 hours per week.
Mhm.
And I think we'll just kind of not even mention the 100 floating hours
That
Mhm.
seems.
in
Right.
particular.
We could just say additional hours.
Well, I don't even know if we need to mention it,
No,
and we don't have an election coming up for a while.
and we can just, like, that's something that we could talk about with them if we think they are worthy.
Yeah, or if they're borderline, like, I wanna take this position, but it's really not enough hours, we can mention that we really have budgeted for 17 per week. Or if it becomes a pay negotiation, we could give up hours for pay potentially, especially if we think that the person can get it done in fewer, because I think frankly, if we're hiring someone who hasn't been a town clerk, they spend a lot of time learning how to do it.
Right, right.
And then we'll keep in the 2 non-consecutive days.
Yeah.
I think it's important. And then we'll say that pays up to 26, depending on experience and certification. So then, yes, I think the ad is done.
Justin, would you, instead of just, maybe we should just put up to, based on experience and not put certification, because they may look at it like they have to be certified.
Right.
Yeah, and no one, we're lucky if we get someone with previous municipal
Yeah,
experience.
so I would take the word
I think that makes
certification
sense.
out of it.
Your call.
And we'll try to get that up there. We'll
Mhm.
get that up there this week.
So Gary, took me aside today and said that he had been speaking with someone who actually is a town resident who'd be interested in the job, but one of the attractants for them is that they work for themselves and pay a fortune for medical insurance. And they know that the medical insurance doesn't come with the job because it's part-time. What they were wondering on is whether it would be possible for them to pay 100% of the policy fee, but be covered under our medical coverage. So Roger's gonna reach out to Maya to find out if that's legal or even something we can do. But I also think we as a body need to decide if that's something we would be comfortable allowing.
I'd be
see
very
an
cautious
obvious-
on that.
I don't see an obvious downside. The only one I see is that I do believe it changes our rates if we have a lot of big claims, like if people get very, very sick, et
But are
cetera.
you ready to offer it to everybody that's working part-time?
Point
I mean,
taken.
you can't, in my opinion, you can't cherry pick a rule for one person and then say, oh, you can't do that. I don't believe you can.
You're absolutely right.
They'd spend, depending on what plan they get, they'd probably spend somewhere around 50% or more of their wages on health insurance.
The bottom line is,
Might be worth
that
it.
may be worth it to them. That is what I'm telling you. That is
We
what's
need to help
going
them
on
get
out there.
better.
Better.
I don't know. My premium
It's
with
hard for
Mass
me to
Health
imagine
wasn't.
that that's true, but it appears to be.
I think you have to be very careful on something like this, because if you offer it to one, you may be looking at a lawyer saying if it's good for one, why isn't it good for everybody?
Well, I absolutely think you're right. The question is this something, like, is it legal for us to do it at all? And is there a downside if we did it? Because if we did do it, we would have to offer it to all the part-time employees. There's no obvious cost to the town if the employee is paying their full freight. Why they want it is another question, but that's
Yeah,
up to
but
them. But there
I-
might be a hidden downside that I'm not seeing.
yeah, but I think, do the math, do the 15 times 26, 4 weeks a month. And if they're paying the full policy, if it's a single, I don't remember what we call, what do they net? I mean, you're paying someone to do you're paying them health care coverage versus pay. I'd be
But there
very,
may
very
be,
careful.
but the question is, if that's what they want to do,
Yeah, but I don't know if you want to be the administrator of that. Can you imagine if you have 5 other people doing that? I'm not sure. I'd be very, very careful.
Okay. I hear you.
Yeah.
I think let's even just start, and it might not even be allowed.
Right.
And if it's
Yeah,
allowed,
I
it
mean,
might.
it doesn't cost anything to ask the question. It doesn't harm either, you know?
I do think though it's a precedent, because if you, it's one thing if you think about our number of full-time employees is fairly limited. If you start thinking about part-time, we have some people that are working 3, 6, 10 hours a week. What would happen if all of a sudden someone wants health insurance through the town, but their salary number is right around, let's say they're making, I don't know, $1,000 a month, and their health insurance costs $1,000 per month, but then they make a little bit less, they make 900, and they owe,
Uh,
I think it
Then
could
you
get
get,
hairy once.
yeah.
We'd have to set some kind of a rule, like, you have to work 15 hours, or
I see your point.
it could get
And the way it
difficult.
works now is their 25% just comes out of their paycheck, so it's
Mhm.
automatically withdrawn. So we get into trouble if they were making less than their premium.
Yes, and they owed money, how would that even?
I don't know.
You'd have to-
And is our plan really that good, or, I mean,
I don't know, compared to what the person's making, I don't know what they were paying for their own insurance.
Right.
If they were, again, if they went like our family insurance, which is almost $2,600, and they were making $2,600 a month, then it might be better than what they're
they don't
paying.
make 2,600 a month, because
I know.
the position it's less than 2,000 a month.
Yeah, so
So even right here, we could be talking about a situation where the health insurance costs more than the plan.
More than the job pays.
More than, I didn't mean.
That's okay.
yeah.
I knew what you meant, but yeah.
So,
I see your
hairy.
point. There has a
Yeah.
lot of potential downsides.
I think what it does raise for me is, should we be combining this position with the administrative assistant position staff? And we can't really right now because of the budget, but depending on how this hiring process goes and the admin assistant hiring process goes, that would kind of remedy this problem, and then we have a health insurance
Right.
plan.
Ironically, this person doesn't want a full-time job, so it wouldn't remedy it here because they don't want a full-time job, because they do somebody else also. But it does speak to the issue of health insurance, that's for sure. Yeah, I know, right? Nikki?
Yeah, I happen to know when you're talking about this, my daughter works at a school, right, and they have good health insurance, I presume. And there was a woman there who worked because she got the health insurance. Her husband had a very, very good business. But evidently it was, all right, so you can get this job and get that health insurance, and I don't have to pay the health insurance for the business. And maybe several of the wives did that, the wives of the owners, it was like a bunch of brothers. So, when you're talking about it, I know that this woman, she only took the job because she got the health insurance.
I don't think it's rare at this
I don't,
point.
yeah, and actually, I think one of the ones that works in her kitchen now does the same thing, because she gets the health insurance.
So.
Moving on,
Oh,
the job description, I just wanted to finalize, so the job description, we're just gonna add that this position is offered holiday and paid time off.
Yes,
And I think that was the only
other major change.
changes.
So about holiday, they only get holiday pay if they're scheduled to work.
Correct,
'Cause-
and then
so-
you don't work. So if, let's
So
say
they have
this
a
person has a
consistent deal.
Wednesday that they are regularly scheduled to come in
Yeah.
from noon till 5 p.m., 5 hours.
Right.
Every Wednesday, or most Wednesdays, they come at noon to 5 p.m.,
Mhm.
and if they don't, they use sick pay, or paid time off, and then, New Year's Day is on a Wednesday,
Mhm.
they get paid for those 5 hours.
Right,
Even though they didn't work.
correct.
And they don't work to replace those.
Right.
Cause if they come in noon to 5 anyway,
Right.
we won't ask them to come in on a holiday.
Right, as long as it's a regularly scheduled office
But, and
hours.
they also won't work if they're, let's say it's this position and there's 15 hours per week.
Mhm.
They will only work, if there's that 5 hours of holiday time, they'll only work 10 more hours that week because there's no additional money in the budget.
The one thing we do have to remember though is that
Transfer station
no Monday off hours,
for Monday holidays.
because there's so many Monday holidays. It would have, my concern isn't even on the budget, my concern is that would be a lot of hours not worked from the town's perspective, and if we're concerned about the 15 hours not even being enough, the last thing we wanna do is set up a work
I'm not worried about the
schedule
15 hours not being enough. I think
Okay.
15 hours is enough.
Well, would it be enough if eight days in the course of the year, they didn't work their hours? I don't know how many.
I think it would all come out in the wash. I mean, it is a factor, but if Monday was a deal breaker with a really good candidate,
Okay.
I think we would just kind of eat it, that's a holiday.
Trying to remember the list. How many of them are Monday holidays?
A good percentage of them.
I think we have 14 total, and if you look at the ones that aren't,
There's
it's
just
just,
I thought 12,
there's
not
12
12.
holidays and the
well,
ones
it's
that
not
are.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's.
Right, it's not those three,
And
so that would be 9.
Veterans Day,
Veterans
which floats
Day.
because it's on the 11th.
Christmas can be on it, Christmas and New Year's can be on.
They
Monday.
can be,
three
but they're
can
not
be on
on
any
every
day,
year.
It's not a.
Right, not every day,
but
it's not always a Monday.
Yeah.
So it's
So-
probably about half of them are actually on Monday.
6,
It's 6 or 7. Are always on a Monday.
right,
I mean, I think we can recommend, ask, but if it's a deal breaker for a good person,
then we might.
I think
have
they
to
figure it
find
out.
Okay,
I think they'd figure out that once every 2 months, they have 5 hours off.
Hmm.
Do you have any more questions about the holiday pay?
No,
Okay.
no. Because that comes up every so often.
Do you wanna wait till the end for the other one? Or whatever?
Yeah, we can do that. Well, we should talk about that.
Is that
right
town
now.
clerk thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
So the other thing Gary said is that it appears that Chris is, because he didn't do his cybersecurity training, he's now locked out of the state computer, which means that Gary can't get onto it either. So right now, the clerk does not have access to the state computer. Either we need to see if Chris is willing to do that training so he can get access again, but normally the census, and I guess it goes out with the dog licenses, goes out with the census, gets done in January. So we're a little behind. So one thought in talking to Gary and Roger I had was, we asked for help in a previous time and Marie was willing to help us out. I don't know if she still would be willing. She's very efficient. I think it might be at least worth asking her if she's willing to get that piece done, because she would have the proper authorization and know how to do it.
I think we are getting to the point, we can only have one town clerk at a time. I think we are getting to the point, I'd rather not bother Chris about doing
And I think he
cybersecurity
said he's
training.
willing to try, but
But I think maybe we're at a point of, if we can make it official, and if Marie is willing to come in, then she could be the interim.
Right. I mean, and I don't know if it's worth reaching out to other clerks if she can't do it, but it just would be really good to get that done before it goes too late.
Yeah, if there's someone who's a good candidate for being interim, I know Gary's said that there's some things that he hasn't been able to do. Just with the hours
He
and
seemed
knowledge
all
and
for it, like,
Yeah.
he was the one going, what do we do about this? We need a solution, so I don't think he would be upset by it.
And maybe if she's willing to train the new person, she's willing to. That would be good, and we have money in the budget because we haven't paid someone for. COLA for the upcoming budget.
Right. Well, you got both of, I think, the police there. Brian was asking for the police for 5% for his 2 officers. And what I asked him in the meeting, um, is to find out what the local jurisdictions are doing for their full-time officers. You know,
Well, are you saying that we would set a separate COLA rate for the police department versus the rest of the town?
it might be an option, yeah. If we're, I don't know where we are competitive with the salaries. I want to see the comparative numbers before we signed off on it.
So should we call that just a competitiveness, changing the pay rate to keep it competitive rather than a?
Yes, yeah, I
cost
think we
of living
should.
adjustment? So was he just asking for a 5% raise?
Yes, for his two
Not
full-time.
COLA.
Yeah, he asked for the COLA to be 5%.
Yeah, he was talking COLA, not like a,
I don't have the notes from the meeting. Roger might have them. I didn't bring them
he
with me.
wasn't asking, he was using it as a COLA, not like a comparison between other towns. He was saying, he was looking for 5% increase.
So the.
But the
social-
point being, if we have positions that are not in sync with the market, we can change them. We can adjust them to be competitive and fair,
Right,
and then we do COLA for the whole town, which is basically just supposed to say, we're just giving you money because groceries and everything costs more.
right. Yeah,
So
Yes.
I agree. I think we should distinguish between those two things. Just as a reference, Social Security has set their COLA at 2.5, and the Consumer Price Index for 2024, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is at 2.9 for the 12 months ending December 2024.
What was the Social Security?
2.5.
5.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the other one called?
Consumer Price Index.
Just the
from
CPI,
Yeah, CPI from the Bureau of Labor.
and that was 2.9.
Correct, for the 12 months ending December.
That's what they saw the
They
annual inflation.
redo it for 12 months, right,
Yeah.
12 months, so, yeah. And SSA is 2.5% for 2025 from Social Security. I mean, not that we have to use those numbers, but you gotta have some in.
Oh, yeah.
The decision, so.
I mean, looking at those numbers is helpful.
Yeah.
I think it's like we talked about with some of the positions that are in the low 20, just hanging around $20 per hour. Maybe we were gonna bump those up this budget cycle, but that wouldn't necessarily be COLA if we decide that that's not a competitive pay rate anymore, so. I don't think we should make a decision on COLA today, but maybe we could try to next week at the finance committee joint meeting.
I agree with that. We should have a general discussion so we have, more participation.
You asked Brian to get some comparatives?
Yes, I did ask him.
Okay.
So were there any other departments that asked for, other than, I know Council on Aging came to us months ago and Community Center might still be asking, I'm not sure, in the midst of all this hiring.
Yeah, they are.
So Council on Aging, Community Center, and Police are asking for raises separate from COLA. Are there any other departments that during budget meetings have asked for that?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
So we should consider those ones as part of their individual budgets.
Mhm.
And then just maybe have a general discussion about just COLA next week.
Right, that'd be fine.
I don't think it would be bad to have a second part of that discussion about, how the town wants to view, because competitiveness is competitiveness. Do we just view that as something you make department by department? I think keeping them separate allows a more complex discussion, because they're not always the same thing, right?
I think ideally,
Did we do it at the DPW?
yeah,
It is competitive.
so ideally from time to time, and ideally annually, we'd look at every position and comparables and say, is this aligned with the market? And if it came time to hire or something like that, or promote, then we would also look at it, but it's not something that happens every single year for every single department. But I think especially if it's raised by department head, look, the people in my department are making less than X, Y, and Z other towns that are right nearby, we're gonna start losing people, then we have to just address it as it
Right.
comes up. And I think that's
I
what we've
agree.
always done.
Which is fine.
If we have time and energy, it'd be good to be proactive and not rely on the department head to bring it to us. But I started thinking about it today, and sometimes it's just really hard to make a comparison because departments may be structured so differently.
It's really hard.
So
It's
you could
really
say,
hard.
well, this position, it has the same title, but yeah, that person might supervise 10 people and that supervises one person, and
I know for the
Yeah.
community center, it's very hard. It's very hard to come up with comparables for towns our size at all.
so we'll have that on the agenda for next week. I'll tell Eileen.
Okay, I agree.
Police cruiser,
He has one estimate, the motor on the one appears that it needs an engine replacement. I told him that he has one proposal, it's in the high sixties, I think $69,000 to replace. I told him that, I would let the select board know, and as we look at capital, but my feeling is that we should look at replacing it versus putting a motor in the car. It's the oldest car.
yeah, so it was actually on our capital plan to be
Yeah.
replaced within this budget cycle.
Right, right. What do we
Um,
have the number for that? Do you have that in front of you, Justin?
I think it was 75.
Okay, then we're good.
I sent that information to Brian because
Okay.
we talked about it briefly,
Uh,
and let me double check it for you because I can pull it up right now. Fiscal year 26. Yeah, it was on for 70,000.
yeah, we're right at the
So
one
we're within
proposal.
1,000.
Yeah, we're within a couple thousand. It was 69 something, the one proposal, but that was, I think, for a Durango and not a skate or the Ford Explorer.
My only question is, what are we gonna do between now and when we get that delivered? Do we need to rent one,
Or can they function with?
or can
I
they
think-
function with just two?
Well, Roger may recall, we didn't really get too deep in that discussion how he would make it until we got it. The waiting period doesn't seem to be as long as it used to be.
It's a lot better for police cruisers from what I understand, because
They
it's
churn
the-
out a bunch of
Yeah,
them.
they turn out a lot more of them.
And right now they're working through it, because you just have the one car. Melanie.
Well, didn't we just have two police cruisers up until COVID came along?
Yeah, it was within the last few years that we've had 3.
We had three. I was told because when we had COVID, that way each officer had a car. They weren't sharing a car.
Yeah, I don't know if it was because of COVID, wasn't what I recall, but it was
the
just
training car thing.
the idea that they would, use it for training and take it out to, when someone goes out for a training,
Yeah,
so that we're not missing a police cruiser.
Or beating
Right.
up our
Yeah.
cruisers, yeah.
So I think I'm with you, Frank, on just replacing it. We are set to replace it anyway. Now the engine's shot. My only question is, what are we doing between now and when we take it in? Because if we need to rent one, then we might look at what the engine costs to replace. But if we can just get by with two, then that seems like a no-brainer.
I would ask Roger if he can get a more definitive plan from Brian.
So can you put that on the budget if it's not already, Roger?
Yep.
On the FY 26 budget?
For the police, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll just have to figure out how we wanna pay for it, but I think it's basically a no-brainer.
Yeah,
And we fortunately don't have a lot of vehicles to purchase this year
Hmm.
compared to last year.
um,
And so Roger will follow up with Brian
Yep.
about the plan for now. Personnel policies, do you need any input from the board this week?
No.
Okay. Town administrator updates.
Started a new highway office administrator last week, Laura Worth. She's done a couple, she's been working on invoices, learning the process for invoices, giving her all the DPW ones. And next week, she's actually we're both meeting with David Stokes, who was the Mass DOT District 1 person over here for the state. And we do have a bunch of interviews coming on this week. There's a couple of them for the community center happening. There's one for the town administrator position, and
Roger, for the town administrator position.
no, that's the position. Yes, I'm gone. So later, guys. I posted for my own job. For the town administrative assistant's position. That's funny.
So for,
Sorry, and slip. Two people for the community center we're
Yeah.
interviewing this week. One for the town administrative assistant.
Is that the only application?
Yeah, there were 4 of them total, I think it was 4 or 5, but the rest of them had little or no experience or just the wrong experience kind of stuff. Couple typical Indeed ones, where you get somebody who is a mechanic who's applying for an administrative job for some reason, but it kind of shows up.
The other
So
one I
there's-
love is when it's like a part-time job and they're willing to drive 2.5 hours each way. Yeah, right, that's good.
Yeah.
So we have
No storm, it's not,
we have one person interviewing for the administrative
Yeah.
assistant and 2 for the community center, which is their second round.
Yes,
Of
the
interview.
second round of interviews. And
are they both town residents?
one is, and one's over in Great Barrington.
Okay,
The person for the administrative assistants in the office here is a town resident. And then there were, I also posted on Indeed the Conservation Commission agent position as well. I got 4 or 5 from them. None of them were, experienced con agents. A lot of them were people that had, interest degrees in environmental business studies, things like that. So, but I passed them all on to Noel. And the Conservation Commission is processing through that themselves.
So are they gonna do the interviews?
Yep. they'll do
And you
the-
might be involved.
I might be
but they're
involved.
gonna run the
More
process.
like a fly on the wall kind of thing. So, and that's about it right there, I guess. That's it, yeah.
So my only question, so you're meeting with David Stokes next week, should someone from the highway department be there?
Who's the?
He's the head of the Mass DOT District 1.
the chapter 9.
Yeah, all the chapter names. I don't know, this is more just kind of like figuring out where our current, because we have two projects that are in
In the
chapter
works.
90 right
Okay.
now.
So it's more administrative.
It's more
stuff.
administrative stuff. I think we may bring him back once we get more towards the spring to determine what sort of projects there are in the process, how we go through all that.
Mhm.
And actually Laura is trying to figure out if there's a way to combine, because like Jim had an account with the chapter 90, I set one up. I don't think I did, I may have done one thing in it or started something. And then Laura's thinking maybe there's a way to combine all those and see if we can get pull data from one and get into it.
Mhm.
Or we might just have to log in and change the password and logins for Jim and that sort of stuff with Jim's account. So really just trying to figure out, get an idea of where things are with the accounts.
Alright. Moving on to unanticipated business, I just have a few small updates. One is that I started asking some questions about pilot and, sounds like Hume is really the main nonprofit that we could ask. There's questions of others like the NRC and Monterey Land Trust, and I was wondering if we should ask nonprofits like that for pilot, and in some ways, it seems like we could, and in some ways, it seems like the whole purpose of that organization is public serving, in that they're offering and maintaining hiking trails free to the public, for anyone to use, so
Yeah.
maybe it's not the same as an organization with
Yeah, I don't think.
Making money.
running private programs and making
I agree
money
with
in
you,
that.
Justin.
Yeah, me too.
I know.
Who was it? Just BNRC and who?
Monterey Land Trust.
Oh, yeah.
And I think all of their properties are both open to public use and
Yeah.
recreation, really, is their main purpose is serving the
Right.
public.
Mhm.
They don't make any income anyway, right? Do they?
Well, donations.
Donations.
I think all of their money goes to their services, basically. I mean, staffing of their services.
So Hume, and I still have to follow up with Don Clausen about really if there are any others, because I mean, there are churches, there's at least a couple of churches. I know the church is already going kind of through kind of a reorganization,
This one, and then there's
the
the
Catholic Church
chapel.
up on,
Yeah,
But.
but,
Airtown.
I mean,
I don't know, yeah, I don't think, so I'm just trying to make sure that we're being fair about it,
yeah.
and that there's a rhyme and reason about why we can set a rule, like if your property is open to the public 24/7, like BNRC, and the whole purpose of the organization is public serving, then we're not gonna ask for pilot it's already a service to the public.
Right.
I guess it's really also trying to define and understand the real main purpose for a pilot. Because my understanding has always been that pilots have been something that, a business that makes a significant amount of money is more willing, and it would actually pay more in taxes, like personal property taxes or personal property. They use it as a way to bring their business into town, into a municipality. So if it's like, if I'm a business and I'm gonna pay $1 million in property tax or personal property, and if I bring my business to town, I'm bringing much more than, I'm bringing people, I'm bringing business, I'm bringing people that are gonna buy things in the town. I really like to build my business here, but could you give me a break on the property taxes, which is why I want a pilot. It's a payment in lieu of.
Well,
No,
there's two,
that's how I. No, I know, that's how.
Right, this
Right.
is nonprofit, which would be the opposite of what
I
we're
know,
talking about.
which is why it's
there's
kinda,
two different kinds.
it's kinda weird how.
There's two different
pilot
kinds.
works.
Some are a requirement, like an agreement.
Yep.
So one of the things that we might see with the solar is that
Yes, in that
they
case.
may not be paying taxes, but there's a pilot
That's a
agreement,
perfect example.
but then they're required by the agreement to pay.
Yes,
With Hume, we're talking about a voluntary.
Yeah.
payment.
Right.
Now, a couple,
cause Gould Farm, we don't really know because they've been paying a pilot for years.
Gould Farm pays a pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hume, by the way, I just asked Don what they would be paying based on their current assessment, they'd be in the $50,000 per year tax bill.
Outside, without a pilot, if they were just paying a tax bill.
Yeah, if they weren't a nonprofit.
Sure
And
could use
then,
it.
what's that?
Sure could use it.
Yeah. One other thing that I wanna mention, I'll have to bring it to the board, to sign a letter, but after we approved the recall special act at town meeting
Mhm.
last May, we signed a letter sending it to our representatives, which was not ideal because we were approaching the end of his legislative session. At the time, when we signed the letter, the certified town meeting minutes weren't available, and I didn't follow through. when the certified town meeting minutes were available. So the recall special act has not reached our legislature, which is an error. At the same time, you have 2 chances to get it through, and if you don't bring it up at all, you don't waste one of your 2 chances.
Oh.
So I'm thinking now that we're beginning a new legislative session, we'll get Donna to just review the draft, and we'll get
Send it with the.
with the certified town meeting
Right,
minutes
yeah.
at the beginning of a legislative session, so that we have a real shot to get it through. What happened last time was they put it forward twice, and it didn't get through, and so it was dead. They needed a new town meeting vote. So in some ways, it was a administrative error on my part. In some ways, it's kind of a blessing because we didn't waste an attempt.
And I mean, they didn't vote it down, they just never voted.
Yeah, but you can't
No,
reintroduce
no,
it more than twice.
I totally get it, it's just, I'm just pointing
Yeah.
out, it's ridiculous, if they put something forward, it should just get voted on. Like, how hard would that have been, right? It just,
You'd think.
So this time maybe we need to be on our people to make sure to get it through. And when does the legislative session start? It's soon.
I think it already started in January.
I think it's already started too.
So we're at the beginning of it, which is good. So, all right.
Maybe we should have asked that of Lee Davis.
Yeah, well, that
that's
was
exactly
what
what we have to
made
do.
me think of it. When I was emailing her back, I was like, did we? And long story short, I know what had happened was we got the letter drafted and signed, and then I was gonna send it, and we didn't have certified town meeting minutes yet. And I don't think that it took horribly long to get them, but by the time we got them, it
How
Fell
long
off.
ago?
fell off the map.
Was it 2 years ago? Two town meetings ago?
No, it was just
This
this
past
May.
Oh, just this past May.
Yeah,
6 months ago.
Oh.
We had previously done it 2 years
Oh,
before
that's
that,
right.
But it
they
got filed
but it got
twice.
filed twice and
That's
never got voted on.
That's right, okay.
That's
so
why
we had to do another town meeting vote, so it's a sore spot for basically about everybody.
Yeah.
But we're gonna do it right this time.
What else?
Anything else that we should talk about before we?
I don't have anything else.
I don't know if I'll do that Verizon thing for next
They want a letter of support.
letter of support.
For what?
Yeah, do they have one drafted up?
They do.
For
Yeah.
what?
So Verizon, contacted me,
You know what?
this past
Can you
week.
send it to me? We'll deal with it next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I wanna run it by fire account.
Okay.
Cause it's really odd that we're not going through the company that wires 99% of the time.
I know, yes.
So let's,
I'll find it and send it to you. We can talk about it next week.
to be transparent, Verizon is wondering about getting a letter of support saying we wanna wire 100% of the town.
No, actually not
No.
100% of the time. Only those locations that show up. I thought the same thing. And she explained, only those locations that show up as not being, having the proper, speed, internet speed as determined by the state. So if they don't have like 100 gigabit, whatever it was, and there's spots that show up like that, but for all different reasons other than the fact that there's no fiber. So there's fiber on the street,
Right.
Except for
except for 8 houses in town. But there's fiber on the street, but people have multiple reasons why they're not connected to that fiber. I mean, I'm an example of that. I have DSL as the backup for my Verizon hotspot that I use for my Wi-Fi in my house, because I don't wanna pay the money to connect to the fiber on the street.
Right.
So my house, my
You don't have
house,
fiber connect?
I'm not.
I don't have fiber connect.
my house looks like, my house.
I am so grateful.
Yeah, but my house looks like it's not connected to fiber, so
Right.
they're like.
But
so
that's
it's a problem.
bizarre to me because
It's totally.
it was always about, I thought with the state program, giving people the opportunity to connect, not about actually having people connect.
Well, I think,
It's a personal decision. If a homeowner
Yeah.
decides, I don't wanna pay $1,000 install and $100 a month, we're not gonna
It's
force
like
them.
cable, like if you don't wanna pay for 152 channels and nothing to watch, then then you shouldn't pay for it. On the other hand, if you wanna have any TV reception at all, you gotta have to do something.
And her,
TV used to be free.
yeah,
TV used to be worth watching.
Oh, that too.
and so what she was also saying is that some of this is that in Boston, they don't quite understand, or federally, they don't quite understand how things are working out in the country
Shocking.
versus,
That's so
versus the
different from
municipal
everything
government
else.
and how these things, and how these sort of things work.
Well,
So,
let's take it up
I'll
next week.
I'll
and
forward it to you.
I just wanna get some answers,
Yep.
because we also have a contract agreement
Yeah.
with Fiber Connect that we wouldn't wanna breach in any way, and
Yeah.
I want what's best for all the residents.
Yeah.
But we wanna do something that makes sense, so we just have to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
Anything else before we adjourn?
Wow,
Nope.
that was pretty good.
I have nothing else.
So I just to reiterate, I am gonna send you guys, like, keep in mind, this is a work in progress. I am gonna go ahead and send you the Excel worksheet. It is my hope that, you have the opportunity to look at it and give me feedback about what isn't clear to you, because that will help me to know what I need to make sure I explain more thoroughly somewhere.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay, will do.
In your spare time, Frank?
Alright, next week, finance committee, hopefully, assuming they're available. I'll move that we adjourn,
Second,
and we'll call a vote.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Alright,
Yes,
that's unanimous.
all right, have a good evening.
Meeting adjourned at 7:19.